do that. Okay. So welcome everybody. I am so delighted to have Bunny Divina Maa with us today, talking about how powerful and healing plant medicines can be. I know I'm looking forward to learning a lot from Bunny. We have so much to cover in a pretty short amount of time. So I want to start by just sharing a little bit about how I know Bunny, and then we'll allow her to take most of it away. Bunny and I met, I was trying to think about this. I can't remember the very first time, but I have memories of us being at many different chanting events, because we know each other through the Northern California Bhakti Yoga community. But I remember one night at, I think it was at the Iyengar Yoga, I think, or IYI. Anyway, one of the yoga ashrams in San Francisco, and you had like driven 2.5 hours or something to get to this event. And I also have very special memories of being with you in Joshua Tree with our spiritual communities. And then I was so blessed that you said yes to coming to teach. You taught Hatha Yoga, and you also shared beautiful mantra. And this is an amazing woman. I'm so excited to introduce her to you today. So the last thing that I offered in person was my Joshua Tree retreat, and Bunny was there sharing some of her gifts. So I wanted you all to have an opportunity to meet her a little more intimately today, and to talk about this really fascinating topic. So welcome, Bunny. And I'm so glad I don't just get to have you to myself. I get to share you with some of my people today.
Yay! Thanks everyone for being here.
So yeah, can you tell us, I mean, that was a really informal intro to you. Can you just share with the audience a little bit more about what you do in the world and what moves your heart and soul?
Oh, well, I would say what I do in the world overall is I see myself as a space holder. And what moves my heart and soul is to empower others to use their voice and to use my own voice through song, through writing, through chanting, many different things, sounding, toning, so many different things we can do through the voice. So yeah, I would say that's really what moves me every day is that inspiration.
Beautiful. I know I've been posting a lot to my patrons, and also that my main go-to practice during this intense time of the pandemic has been to chant. It's literally one of the main things that's sustaining me. So I love it that that's where our connection started. But I know you practice and offer a number of different modalities. So tell us a little bit more about your journey to how you're sitting here today.
Well, it's a long one, and I spent about 20 years as a registered nurse, and during that time, I also was an on and off yoga teacher / student of yoga, and in 2012, I experienced what many of us know as the dark night of the soul, and I basically left everything behind, my home, my marriage, my business, my job, and went on the quest for something more meaningful. And through that experience, and what just continues to evolve at this just rate so quick, it's really hard for me to catch my breath and keep up with it sometimes. I have stepped into many new roles. What I call myself now is a multidimensional healer, meaning I am able to assist people to heal on multiple levels. So mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, just basically to reconnect with their own inner healer. And we do that not just on this dimension, in the third dimension or the fourth dimension, but in the fifth dimensional planes, in the galactic dimensions, and other timelines. And I also do therapeutic body work sometimes. So if I'm assisting people, it might be online or it could be in person. And yeah, I'm writing a book, as you know. That's I'm actually in the process of editing and publishing that book, and that's a lot about that journey over the last 8 years. I've spent a lot of time being able to travel all over the world to assist in retreats, in medicine retreats, in yoga retreats, sharing different things, whether it be my voice through song, through holding space in ceremonies, through assisting shamans, through leading embodied voice activation journeys and shamanic journeys and things at festivals and all kinds of things. So it's been a really exciting time for me ever since I decided to drop everything and go on that quest for what's in here.
Well, I'm so honored, Bonnie, that you said yes to coming to teach at my event, because you have been in Guatemala, right? You've been to Egypt. I mean, both your study and then your teaching has taken you all over the world, literally.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay, so just one other disclaimer that I want to share. For those of you, many of you know me as a Neo-Tantra teacher, and while I am that, I'm also quite fascinated with different stages of consciousness, and that can be achieved through many things, through chanting, through breath work, through plant medicines, for example, which we're going to focus on today. But the disclaimer I want to make is that we really want to watch how much fire we add on top of fire. And I personally do not recommend anybody does, intense practices, say like sexual healing or neo-tantric practice, with medicine added in, like, especially if you're new, just like, learn how to handle one modality before. I just see communities where they just pour on more and more things, and we'll talk about integration of medicine and ceremony, and you and I are both really into ritual. So just to be mindful of what we do. So tell me a little bit about what a shaman even is, what that means to you, and what the difference is between sort of indigenous shamans or more, can we say Western shamans?
Western shaman is what's typically used, actually. Yeah. So a shaman is basically somebody who is a bridge to the other realms and to other realms of consciousness. That would be, I would say, the most general description of a shaman. A shaman is one who is deeply connected to nature, to earth, fire, water, air, ether, to the trees, to the plants, to the animals. And from there, it can go in a lot of different directions. So, for example, I have had the honor of working with indigenous shamans in Peru and in Brazil, who are also called curanderos. They are master plant doctors. They, depending on where they are in the world, they may have 100 or more so plants that they work with or prescribe for others. But a shaman is not always a curandero. A shaman might just be someone who calls themselves an ayahuasquero, meaning they only work with this one particular medicine. A shaman might not be somebody who works at plants with all these days. It might be somebody who works with other things like cord cutting, soul contracts. So it can be quite varied. And so we have these shamans at the very high level who sort of do it all. And then we have shamans who maybe do one or two of those different things. And Western shamans generally train with somebody who is indigenous. So, for example, the Western shamans that I know have all either worked with, say, the Shipibo lineage in Peru, or the European indigenous lineage in Peru, maybe the Huni Kuin, Yawanawa, the Daime. There's many lineages in Brazil as well. And so they have spent years in the jungle, in the, various places, studying, learning, doing their own what we call dieta. So working with different plant medicines, where basically you are going steady with that plant medicine. Okay,
I love it.
going steady with them. There's nobody else coming in. So seriously, like, people will not, even if they have a partner, won't even sleep in the same bed with them. They're taking in the minimal of anything else that might be considered any kind of medicine. So even like garlic, sex, sex medicine, all these different kinds of things. So they go into these very serious journeys under the guidance of a shaman. Then there are shamans who learn from other Western shamans, and so it can be quite varied, and of course we know shamans don't just come from South America. This term originated around like Mongolia, and so there are Celtic shamans, and there are shamans of the Indus Valley. And we just know them by different words.
I'm really appreciating you flushing this out, Bonnie, and I know I'm asking quite a big question, like, please explain what a shaman is. But the reason I'm asking that, I remember when I was last in Sedona, and I love Sedona, but like, everybody's a shaman in Sedona. And I'm laughing at that because it's not actually a word I would have used. And when I say that, I'm saying it quite facetiously, obviously. Like, not everybody is a shaman. Not everybody, like, hanging their shingle out has done more than like a weekend workshop or taken a bunch of drugs. And what I love about what you are saying is that you've gone and studied with the indigenous people. You were just sharing with me before the call, you were just sitting, may I share the
Yeah, sure.
He's just, sitting with the Lakota people in Texas. So I love it that you're going to the source traditions that are available to you. And I have a teacher. One of the people on the call is in this community with me. My teacher, many of you know her, Norma Ramos. And she is a shaman, but she doesn't talk about it a lot. It's not like this, oh, I'm a shaman. The minute you have somebody coming out and saying that, I start asking questions about, like, where have you studied? What have you done? She's Peruvian, and I can feel it all through her. She just was born into this lifetime knowing a lot of stuff, and then has, since gone on and studied. So,
yeah.
Yes.
Well, a shaman is like a doctor. And so I think that we have to be very, very careful with these words. Even though I've sat at the right hand of many shamans, I've apprenticed, I would not call myself a shaman. And that's not saying that I'm saying that somebody else shouldn't. I'm just saying, for me, I don't feel comfortable with that word. So I prefer the term medicine woman, because we all have our own medicine, that we offer to the world. So we're all medicine men and medicine women. And there is a lot of, we know, with cultural appropriation and all these things, these are very delicate times. And so some people really want to set themselves apart from others. And so, for me personally, even though I've been to, shaman schools and all different kinds of things, that's not something that I have chosen to call myself. Maybe one year, many years down the line, Um, but yeah, thank you for addressing that. And by all means, I know many Western shamans, many people who've just taken a course and they've hung that shingle up, and you know, more power, more anybody who can bring healing to the world in an authentic way. Well, the world needs it, no matter what we call ourselves. So I'll leave it at that.
That's a very beautiful way to honor lots of people. I'm probably a little more judgmental, but this is what I notice. People that are really doing the work, like actually they don't even claim that title much. I had to like really pull it out of my teacher. I'm like, what are you doing? That's different to anything else I've seen before. And kind of only under duress, she said. So yeah, so tell us a little bit more about starting off on this discovery with, I know you've done a lot of things, studied many different modalities, but specifically plant medicine, how that came about for you.
Yes. So I was at a festival that you and I both know well, in Joshua Tree. I was just really, getting out into the world and discovering all of these things about spirituality and, all of these different paths that were available. And so we all have this something voice. In my book, I write about this, the something. Why'd you do that? I don't know. Something told me to. And something told me to go up and speak to this person that I just happened to see. And I was feeling chatty. And I walked up and started talking to this person. We had a very short interaction. And he got my information. Not too long after, I received an invitation to attend a plant medicine ceremony, ayahuasca. And I had never heard of this, and it did not mention that that's even what it was. It was just a singing ceremony. And so I had to ask a friend, I'm invited to this thing. There's all of this diet, like for 2 weeks, I can't have this or this or this or this. And so she was the one who said, I think that's ayahuasca. And she said, trust it. Do you trust it? And I said, yeah, I mean, it's just so crazy, the way that this happened. And so I went to the ceremony. It was 3 nights of ceremony. And it is with a lineage that is based in Peru. And by the end of those 3 ceremonies that were 3 nights in a row, there was a palpable shift, a palpable transformation that occurred. And I also happened to meet a wonderful young man who we fell in love that weekend. And within 3 months, I had sold everything I owned, quit my job, and took off for Southeast Asia and India. So plant medicines, they open a lot of doors. And I really like what you said about not mixing too many things together, because it can be very easy, especially in some communities, say like Kopangan, where I happen to spend a lot of time. Well, you can go to an ayahuasca ceremony one night, you can go to a kambo the next day, you can go to a tantra the next day, you can go to a tantra bhakti shamanism
Mishmash.
You can do all these different things. So it's really important to allow these things to integrate, and then to see where, what doors is this opening for me. And for me, it was very clear that what we call grandmother ayahuasca, she was laying some groundwork for me, opening me up to some possibilities, took me to a place where I would meet others who are still a part of my journey 8 years later.
Others like guides or?
Others, yeah, people that I got to know that weekend.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I'm already off in the transcendental realms going.
So 8 years later, I'm working with the same shaman, and so yeah, it was a really pinnacle point in my life to have those medicine ceremonies. And then it was another, well, I was gone for 13 months, traveling. And then, so it was probably about another year and a half before I came back to ayahuasca again. And then we started having a pretty serious relationship.
And so what does that mean for you? What does a serious relationship mean? I mean, for people that don't know about this, does that mean you're just like high every day, or how is it integrated?
Not at all. I would say it's kind of the opposite, actually, a lot of times. So we can talk about plant consciousness for a second. And perhaps because you are familiar with the deities in the Hindu pantheon, it's very similar in the plant kingdom. Spirit comes through and has its own way of expressing in every single plant. So, and then within each plant, depending on where that plant was grown, who handled it, what did it receive rain? Did it receive sunshine? All of these different things. Then that expression becomes even more unique. So there are some major entheogens, and entheogens are consciousness expanders, essentially. They take us into other realms of consciousness. They help us see that there's more to life than just this, right? And this time and space. So with ayahuasca, there is a spirit that comes through that medicine we call grandmother. And grandmother can be very gentle with us at first. She can show us all the pretty lights. She can show us, the iridescence and the luminosity of everything around us. She can cause us to look at something that maybe that would seem so ugly normally, maybe like, I don't know, a plastic bag of chips or something, but all of a sudden it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, right? So she takes us in usually gently. However, eventually we're going to get to the deeper stuff, the painful stuff, the really hard stuff. Ayahuasca is a purgative, meaning we are going to purge. We are going to usually vomit a lot. Perhaps things also coming out the other end, sometimes at the same time. And
it's reminding me of my time on Kopanyang, and it didn't have anything to do with plant medicine. Both ends.
We can purge in the form of tears, even laughter. I mean, so many different things, right? But eventually, at least in my experience and in most of the experience of the people that I know, coming back to that plant over and over to sit with that plant and that great spirit requires an extreme amount of courage. And it's that something voice and that something inside of you. You say, I don't know why I'm going to do this again. I can't tell you how many ayahuasca ceremonies I sat in and said, I'm never doing this again. Never. This is the last time. But then,
what prompted you to feel that way? Because the experience is so intense, or?
Yes, it can be incredibly uncomfortable at times. Just like anything, we learn to sit with discomfort, right? So there's many paths we learn to sit with discomfort. So same with ayahuasca, we learn to sit with a lot of discomfort.
But is
physical
that like,
discomfort.
sorry to interrupt, like the physical discomfort if you're purging, or
Yes.
the discomfort of being confronted by oneself, right?
By oneself, by even memories of past lives, by, so even I would say the ultimate would be what's called the death experience, where people actually experience their own death. And it's not a physical death, it's an ego death, but it feels like a real death. And that is extraordinarily frightening. And so we've got just basically that. I would say that would be probably the very scariest. And that we know that that's a possibility. If we work with that medicine long enough, we may have that experience. People experience even things where they have remembrances where they were, I've spoken a lot lately about how we come into this life thinking we've only been persecuted, but then we remember we were also the persecutor. So people will have very uncomfortable remembrances and knowings that of times in their life where they have also been the persecutor and done very hurtful things to others. There can be visions. People have had experiences of hell realms. Myself have had experiences of being, covered in snakes and all different kinds of things. So it can be magical and just amazing. And you go and you meet rainbows and fairies and, elves and all these kinds of things and experience those realms, or you can experience the realms, the very scary and uncomfortable realms as well. And in time, even though we say we always set intention, we drop intention, because at the end of the day, she's in charge, and we know that. Going back over and over into those experiences, it requires a high level of trust.
But trust of what? Of the facilitator, the container, the medicine self?
The medicine itself, yes, more than anything. Absolutely got to trust the facilitator. And there are a lot of black magic shamans out there. There are a lot of people that do not know what they're doing with this medicine. It's very easy to get. You can buy it on the internet. You can call yourself a shaman. You can have a ceremony and can hurt a lot of people. And I've known people who have had that experience. So trusting the facilitator is very important. The container, the shaman in that kind of container, the ayahuasquero, they are managing what we call the grid. So anything that's coming in that could be potentially harmful, any like glitches in that grid, they are maintaining this very safe container at all times. So
at least a good one is doing that, because
absolutely. Yes.
it sounds a lot like you're going into shadow realms as well, or there's the
yes.
potential for that, right?
She is a shadow plant for sure. Yes.
Well, I like that, because I actually haven't done ayahuasca to date, and it's not that I wouldn't, but I want to do it at the right time. And I want to really be careful about who I do it with, because I had a student on retreat with me on Maui a few years ago, and she had been very involved actually in the ayahuasca community, and she just told me about a lot of the negative stuff. And this is true of any modality. Really do your research before engaging a teacher or anybody who's going to lead you in ceremony with powerful, medicine. I love that you said sex can also be medicine. There are lots of different kinds of medicine. So yes.
And I'll just, since you brought that up about how you want to have a lot of time around that experience, with some of these master plants, it is very important that we give time before and after the integration, the pre-integration and the post-integration. Anyone who comes to ceremony knows after a while, it's not the ceremony itself that's going to really be the transformational experience as much as the integration period. So this is why, again, you say like, oh, well, I'm going to go take ayahuasca, but then I'm going to go back right to work and get right back into my normal life. And people who tend to do that feel good for a little while, but as somebody, I also do integration work with people. As somebody who's seen the fallout down the line when you don't do the proper pre and post integration, people often end up feeling worse. They often even fall into more darkness. So finding the right kind of support, knowing that your facilitator or someone else is going to be made available to you, so you can continue to have that support, especially when you're first starting out with any kind of plant medicine. These are very important things. And so pre-integration, say going into an ayahuasca ceremony, and this goes for, I'd say, any of the master plants, we want to clean out as much as possible. So this even goes down to like a bland diet, right? We're not using garlic, we're not using salt. We are, of course, no, the big ones would be no alcohol, no sex, no meat, right? It goes on. Dietas can vary a lot, but if we think about, if you were going to invite the god or goddess into your home, you would want it to be super clean, right? You'd want everything to be shiny, and you would want to invite them into this place where you feel like you've really prepared the space for this god and goddess to walk into that space. So when we want to prepare our bodies in the same way, because we are inviting in the goddess when we invite in grandmother ayahuasca. And then afterwards, we want to keep that up. We want to stay really clean for a while. We don't want to invite back any kind of other medicines for a little while, because the conversation is still going on. When we go into plant medicine ceremony, we're having a conversation with the plant, whether we are consciously aware of that or not. So that conversation starts the minute we decide to go to a ceremony, and it continues for, I'm going to say, at least a year or so after. And we want to give as much time as possible. And that doesn't mean you can't necessarily like, oh, I just can't work or do anything. But you want to be as gentle with yourself as possible. You don't want to go then, try a whole bunch of other plant medicines, or, jump into your next thing, whatever that is. You just want to have time for that conversation to continue, to really integrate that experience. And the more we're able to do that, the more we're going to get out of the ceremony.
Right. I mean, I think this is true of many things, like it's true of workshops. And I know I went into big ritual, tantric ritual in India. I was there this time last year. And there's a way I kind of forgot that I had to budget in the integration time. And it was so interesting. It just showed up in my work. It was showing up. It was just like things just slowed down because I had to make that time. So it was forcing me. And because it's kind of the anniversary, I was thinking, wow, like after a year, I feel like I finally integrated the intensity of the ritual or the rituals that we did. So yes, it is important to do all those things. I know some people like the word medicine. I'm going to do medicine journey. That gets thrown around. I hang out in some Burning Man circles. For those of you who don't know, that's why I first came to the US. And the last time I was at Burning Man, I'm not opposed to people doing drugs to do them. I've done that. So I'm not shaming anybody for doing that. But I tend to hold it a little differently, like doing a medicine and being in ceremony versus getting fucked up on drugs. And again, if you want to do that, like go, be responsible, but go ahead and do that. But don't dress it up as doing medicine.
Right.
And I remember on the playa the last time I was dating this guy, and he was like just chasing. He just wanted to be high, and he kept saying, medicine, I need to take more medicine. And I'm like, but that's not what you're doing right now. He didn't like that idea really, but the respect that you're even speaking, and mostly we've spoken to ayahuasca, but there are many kinds. I'm sure you can share some more in a moment. But it is important to respect the power of these plants, because they can really take you to very deep places. So I love hearing that even as you speak. So what
Yeah.
other things would come under plant medicine for you?
Mm. Well, the big ones for me would be ayahuasca, cannabis, which also we throw around that word medicine a lot. And certainly, I'm not shaming anyone, and I certainly have not always done this, but the benefits of moving into intentional ceremony, even with cannabis, and giving her the respect that she really commands, uh, is a much more powerful experience. Huachuma, also known as San Pedro, which is a cactus plant. Tobacco, mainly in the form of what we call hape, which is like a tobacco snuff, a powder that is ground and mixed with other ash of other plants or bark, depending on the tribe who makes it. And
So,
also,
sorry, is the tobacco smoked then in a?
no, it is administered through what we would call a caripe or a tepe, and that is a powder, and it's essentially blown up through the nose. And then that's also a purgative, and that is a masculine medicine. I've been working with tobacco in the form of hape quite a bit lately, because I have been feeling the need to heal so much of the masculine wounds within me. And I also have felt the need to protect myself a lot more lately with all of the stuff that's going on in the world. And tobacco, also in one of my plant circles, we call him Father Earth. He is the master protector. He's also friends with all of the other plants, which not all plants are friends. They don't all want to hang out together. But tobacco comes into pretty much every plant medicine ceremony. He is the great protector. And I've also worked with tobacco in the form of mapacho, which is also known as jungle tobacco. It's sometimes mixed with other things. And so, say the Shipibo in Peru, they use mapacho just constantly in ceremony. And it's used to send out prayers, to send intention. So for an example, a shaman who is sitting there holding space may sense that somebody on the other side of the room is having some difficulty. Maybe they feel really stuck, like they need to have a purge, or they're really, really struggling. They may just blow some mapacho in their direction, and you can actually see all of a sudden, they straighten up, or they throw up, or many different things can happen. Kambo, which is not a plant medicine, that's a frog medicine. We call that also a master medicine, that works on all levels, multidimensional levels. Bufo, which is the toad medicine, which we find in Sonora area, Sonoran Desert. Kambo generally comes from the tribes of down in like Peru and Brazil area, are the tribes that I see most working with that medicine. Let's see. Yeah, so those would be some of the big ones. But then, we have everyday ones that are just so powerful, like sage, lavender, rosemary. I've recently moved to Texas, where I live in a pine forest. And pine is an extraordinary plant medicine that carries its own super powerful consciousness. And we can diet with these medicines in different ways as medicine, but typically that means, again, cutting out as many other things of our life out of our life as we can, so we can have a very clear conversation. And then, so even something like sage or pine, we would take those in as tea. We might, also be burning them. We might be meditating with them, different things like that. So it's really infinite, the amount of super powerful plant medicines that are out there. And there are plants that will really surprise you, like say lavender, which we think of lavender as like, oh, it's going to help me go to sleep, and she just relaxes me. However, I've known somebody who has dieted with lavender, and again, the ultimate goal is for them to be more peaceful and to be more, centered, and to have all of these beautiful feelings that we want to bring in with lavender. But in order to do that, they had to purge a lot of other things that were getting in the way. And lavender did that for them. And that was not a comfortable experience for them.
Well, I love it that you're bringing that in, because if we really do allow our systems to get sensitive enough, then, and we've cleared them out, then you can really feel the healing power, even of something that, I bought some Epsom salts yesterday with lavender essential oils in them. And I'm not expecting to have a major cathartic experience. But so a lot of it, I imagine, also has to do with the intention behind why you're using the different plant medicines. Right?
Yeah.
And
I think you also, everything.
I think you also mentioned you've worked with cacao in the past.
Oh, and cacao, yes, of course. Thank you for bringing cacao, madre cacao. Yeah. Forgive me,
That's right.
because I've actually, cacao is been a very big part of my life. Not lately, but in the past, in the last few years, especially huge. I've had the honor of leading cacao ceremonies. I've had the honor of being initiated into the cacao priestesshood. And cacao is one of the, I would put it right up there as far as like one of the master plants. And cacao contains anandamide, which is a chemical that is released it's released from I believe our pineal gland, and it is that bliss molecule. We call it the bliss molecule. So say like something like that carries DMT, like ayahuasca, and there's many plants that contain DMT. We call that the spirit molecule or the God molecule. Anandamide is the bliss molecule. And so we are able to experience that flood of that bliss molecule in our bodies when we move into a ceremony with cacao with that intention. Also theobromine, which is beautiful medicine for the heart and for the lungs. So we often say that cacao, you hear it all the time, like, oh, it's a heart opener. You see it all the time with kirtan now, cacao and kirtan, and yeah, they go great together. But beyond that, what I like to bring into my cacao ceremonies is cacao is actually putting us in touch with our divinity. And it is the elixir of the gods and goddesses.
Oh, I love hearing that. I've done some cacao ceremonies with people that brought it back with Jaya, Lakshmi, and Ananda in Joshua Tree. And it is very heart opening. It definitely shifts your field. But what I like about it, at least, and I've already done it a handful of times, but it feels very clean and clear. And it's quite gentle. It's, there's no purging, for example, or at least I haven't experienced purging. You know more about this stuff than I do. But so there is a range depending on why you're engaging these medicines. And I love how you're talking about the consciousness of the plants. I wasn't quite sure what you were going to say about that before. But in the energy community that I study in with my teacher, Norma Ramos, she gets us to study energy matrices, and one of them references the spirit of the plant. So even everyday plants all around us have consciousness and spirit. But I'm just feeling that particular field so strongly, the spirit of the plants in our conversation today.
They all have their own personality. Just like spirit moves through the Hindu pantheon with all of the gods and goddesses, 33 million or so of them. all plants have their own personality, and they, some of them can be, we feel like a real affinity, like they're our friend. Others we can feel really repulsed by, just like people, you know. So yeah, the plants hold a consciousness of spirit, and they have no ego. And that's another very important thing to remember about the plants, is they have no
I imagine
ego.
it allows us to practice that place of not being
Yeah.
overly, wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
profound.
plant medicines will help us deconstruct, dismantle, decondition, unwire, unravel. So they kind of, they help us to break everything down, dissolve the ego. At the end of the day, that's what all of these paths are about, whether it be yoga, tantra, Buddhism, plant medicine work. They're all here to help us dissolve our ego and to remember who we are in here, and in our hearts. And so yeah, it's very important to remember that that's one very, very special thing about the plants that really sets them apart as teachers, as they have no ego.
Wow. I didn't know about that piece. I love it. I mostly have experience with hallucinogenic things or substances. And what I've noticed is over the 20 odd years I've been exploring with them, now for me, it's like an oracle. I will set aside an intentional time, and then I ask it a question at the beginning. And it's very interesting how even once I'm not altered anymore, a lot of the consciousness expansion, I'm not saying that very well, but a lot of the ideas that I got to see kind of from this different angle, when my consciousness was altered by the medicine of these plants. It's sometimes plants, sometimes for me it's chemicals, but anyway, it still makes sense long after. It allows you to see things from a different vantage point, and I find that very valuable. For me, it can actually help me feel like I'm kind of sorting out my whole life, because you get to see it not from your regular human limited perspective. I'm curious, just because you've brought up the Hindu pantheon a few times, how much you know, and I didn't tell you I was going to ask this, but about Shiva's relationship with ganja, with cannabis.
Yeah, and I want to say, Mark, I'll acknowledge your question in a moment too, because this all kind of ties in together. Of course, I don't know anything for sure. My own personal experience, after especially sitting with the Babas in Nepal and in India, who are Shaivites, is that there is a extraordinary connection between Lord Shiva and cannabis. Yeah. And so I kind of imagine that Shiva often was there, smoking his chillum there on Mount Kailash, meditating.
Right?
We see, there's sometimes images also that support that.
For me, it actually enhances my meditation. And it's not that it's the only way I can meditate, but I've actually been using cannabis very intentionally in this pandemic, and I notice it changes the way I breathe. It changes how I'm able to drop into stillness. And I need to go and do more research, but I've been looking at this, like, because in a lot of circles we move in, they don't necessarily talk a lot about how plant medicine can be used, right? And it's in some ways even sort of poo-pooed. Yeah. And so I'm quite fascinated in learning more about that. So is there anything you want to address to Mark before we get onto your book?
Sure. Yeah, and just Also, I just want to address what you said, because moving in with intention is so important. Cannabis is also a shadow plant, meaning that if we misuse her, abuse her, she will bring out our shadows. And if we cultivate a relationship with the spirit of that plant, and we give her the respect she commands, then she will absolutely drop us right into the space of the heart, deeply connect us into spirit. And the ego, there's so, I mean, of course, we could just talk for hours about the ego. I would say, in relationship to the plants, the ego is often what keeps us separate from our true nature. And yes, Shivites are people who are, yes. And so the ego is, the place that keeps us in this more I, me, my, mine, I am this body, in our roles, in our identities, which I write a lot about in my book. So we start to peel off all those egoic layers and egoic constructs like beliefs. And we basically are just whittling away, just like with any other practice, as the longer we work with plant medicines, all of those layers that keep us identified with things other than who we really are, which is the I am.
Right. So it helps to filter out some of those layers, it sounds like, or deconstruct them.
Yes. And I've had my first ayahuasca experience ever. I had a conversation with my mind, my ego, and my true self. And I'd heard about these terms. I'd been doing yoga for many years. But I was actually able to delineate and understand, oh, that's the ego. Oh, that's the mind. This is intuition. This is the higher self,
Great. So we've referenced your book, and I want to hear more about, I know plant medicine and your journey with that features in the book, but tell us a little more, because it's even broader than that. Tell us what's the title? Let's start with that.
It's a perfect segue, because the book is called The Place Beyond the Story. And that journey starts when I decide to leave everything behind with my plant. I have that first experience with ayahuasca. Then I go to Southeast Asia and India, travel all around, get to sit at the feet of many enlightened masters. And what I begin to learn is that there is much more to me than my story. And that I spent a lot of time in stories of who I was, but none of those stories were really who I was. And so there's a place beyond all of those stories, beyond all of those identities and roles, that we discover the more we do our work. The more we illuminate our shadows, the more we peel off the layers, the more we sit quietly. And there's so many beautiful paths, and I was able to experience many of them while I was on that walkabout, we'll call it. And so that is essentially what the book is about, is the beginning of that journey for me. The who am I beyond my story? Who am I without my stories? Who am I if I am not this body? If I am not a nurse or a medicine woman or a sister or all of these other things that we can use to describe ourselves? What if they all went away? Who am I? What is that eternal part of me? What does that look like? What does it sound like? So that's essentially what the book is about. And I saw a question.
Yes, there is a question from Mark saying, do you have to have a sense of smell? I beg your pardon, the name. No. Okay, so the properties when you ingest, in whichever way, of connecting with the plant will still have an effect whether you have a sense of smell or not.
Yeah, and I would actually say that in time with the right plant, perhaps a sense of smell could even be regained. It would be a whole nother conversation about the amazing healing I have seen happen through these plants. People who could not walk, who could walk again. I mean, people who couldn't even go outside because they were allergic to basically everything in the world, who now travel the world and go on planes. I mean, it's just unbelievable the healing that can take place through the plant medicines. Yeah.
Right. And
so people come to plant medicines with all kinds of ailments. Yeah.
And you actually offer guided journeys for people, am I right? Facilitating these experiences.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I do. Right now, what I would really prefer to focus on is the journey that happens when we just allow ourselves to sink into that place without any plant medicines or anything like that, which we call them shamanic journeys. And absolutely, it's just mind-blowing what can happen without any of that. But I think the reason I am able to help people do that is because I carry those plant medicines inside of me. So I am really able to somehow bring people into that plant medicine experience or bufo experience without, and they've never actually had any experience with those medicines, but they can actually journey in a very similar way. And yes, I don't currently, just because of where I'm at and I've just moved, things like that, just the state of the world, I'm not taking anybody myself on plant medicine journeys. But if I did in the future, I would say what I really love to work with now is the bufo medicine, the toad medicine, also known as it's 5-MeO-DMT, which is the spirit molecule or God molecule. And I'm very much interested in doing a whole thing where people can have the pre-integration and the post-integration, and we can go through a whole entire journey together that may take the place over a couple of weeks minimum. Because a lot of people, bufo can be over in 20 minutes. So people think, oh, I'm just going to go, I'm going to pop in, I'm going to do it, then I'm going to get on with my day. But again, it can be more harmful. So
I know people who've taken a year to integrate a DMT experience. So it's
so I'm really interested in the pre and post integration. That's really my passion beyond ceremony itself. And as you know, I'm a singer and I'm a ceremony singer, and we can bring in the plants through that as well. And that's through the Ikaros and all other kinds of songs. And you can experience the plant spirit just through the songs themselves. So many ways to experience the plants.
So I popped your website, and I think I got that right. iwanttoheal.com.
Yes.
Right? But if people are interested in your book, because I know we have somebody that's like, when do you have a date for when the book will be out, and how can people find out more about it and connect with what you are currently offering?
Yeah, thank you. Well, my deadline I've set for myself is November 2nd. That's just how it worked out with on Amazon as I've gone through some things. But it's going to come out on Amazon Kindle first, and it will be followed with a print edition through Amazon. From there, I'm going to look into other things like Google Reads, or I know there's just a lot of them out there right now. But Amazon was the one that came up first. So people have also, the people who are reading the raw version right now are also requesting the audio. So that would come to many, talk about a journey. It's never gonna stop with the book until I write the second book, which is already ready to come. It's like, when are you gonna finish this one? We're ready.
Amazing, Bunny. Well, I'm really grateful. I know at least one of our participants has to jump off shortly, but I'm really excited. I can't wait to read your book, just because I kind of know you in some ways from from our Bhakti yoga community, but just Thank you so much. Our participants are being so sweet, making sure they honor you before they leave.
Oh, so
Um,
wonderful. Yes, thank you so much, everyone.
Good. I'm really glad. I'm glad you're enjoying Bonnie. It's my
Thank you,
intention is to
Mark. Such
bring
a
on
pleasure.
interesting and amazing people. It's okay, Bonnie. We get to be
Everyone
human
knows to
in
say
this.
the name.
So yeah, so the book is due November 3rd, November 2nd.
That's the latest.
And
Yeah.
where do they go to get the book? On Amazon? Is that the best
On
way?
Amazon, and then eventually I've got to put a page up on my website. I haven't even done that yet, but certainly I'll figure out a way to do that too, so people can just contact me directly, and let's cut out the middleman if we can, you know.
Great. And is there a way for them to sign up for your mailing list? Bye. Mailing list on your website. Like, can they do that?
I don't have a mailing list.
We need to talk.
I just do blogs on the website, which some people tune in for, but I haven't done those actually in quite a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
People can also find you on Facebook as well, right?
Oh yes, that's one of
Yes.
the main ways I communicate with the world these days.
I have to say, I really enjoy the wisdom in your posts and the courage that I see, Bunny, in you. Also, we're involved in other communities. A lot of communities are going through intense periods of growth and challenge, and you're not afraid to speak the truth. You're not afraid to go against the grain and like stand up for somebody. You know, there's a lot of cancel culture these days who's like being canceled, and you were like, be with them and see, like, still love them, just like Maharaji said, like, yeah, just like loving everybody. I see that so beautifully in you, and I think you are such an amazing gift to the world. And I'm very picky about who I'll invite to teach at my retreats, or, you know, who I'll even introduce to my audience. But I'm so honored that you came today to share with all of us, and thank you for the blessings of your work and the ways you are helping people, even right now, to heal remotely in the world. So do reach out to Bonnie directly. I'm going to end our recording now, and just the recording part, and then we'll chat again. Hang on a second.